This video is brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your generous support in funding this channel and keeping it up and running. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavony Township, the show where it's not about me and my decks. It is about you and your decks, whether you're a content creator that I'm collaborating with, whether you're someone that's a patron of mine at patreon.com/magicalhacker and gets free videos from me every month, or whether you're someone that's won one of my Facebook or Twitter giveaways. For today's episode, we've got a patron submitting a really cool deck here. So this is Jack's Torbran Thane of Redfield deck, and here's the commander. 4 mana for a legendary 2/4 Dwarf Noble that says, if a red source you control will deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. And when I was talking to Jack, he said that this is basically trying to do the best possible deck, trying to burn opponents out. So most people tend to think of burn as not being very good in Commander. You've got 3 opponents, and each of those opponents have twice as much of a life. So trying to burn out all your opponents might be a little bit hard. But with Torbran, it might be the boost that Jack needs to take this deck and actually finish off the slow burn on opponents. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a deck doctor on this deck, see what we can do to make this deck a little bit better if possible, and then just see how it plays out. So we're going to go ahead, and the first thing I like to do is take a look at the mana base. He's got 35 lands in here. 34 of them are snow-covered mountains, and then there's a single Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. I like having utility lands in my monocolor decks, so if you wanted to, Jack, you could probably take out like maybe 10 of these snow-covered mountains. I know they're probably going to be useful in here. I think you've got Scred? No? Maybe there's something else. Is it that 3-drop artifact? No. It might just be the snow-covered mountains here for, just how cool it looks. And it's very thematic, if you've got a dwarf as your commander to play a snow-covered mountain. But yeah, like I said, I think you can take out maybe about 10 of these, snow-covered mountains, include a few good utility lands, something like, I like Myriad Landscape. A lot of people don't like that, but I think something that most people will agree with me. Scavenger Grounds is pretty nice. You've got Strip Mine that if you can afford it, it's good. Otherwise, Ghost Quarter is not a bad replacement for Strip Mine if it's outside your budget. Let me see here. Scavenger Grounds, Strip Mine. I like Vesuva and Thespian Stage as well. Both of those cards. If someone's got down a Gaia's Cradle, for example, or if someone's got down a Cabal Coffers and somebody else or that same player has an Urborg out there, an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, you can use Vesuva Thespian Stage to copy lands that are really good, so you can kind of get a benefit off of your opponents of what they're doing. If not, you can just copy one of your own mountains, and sure, the Thespian Stage, you'd have to use the 2 mana to copy something, or the Vesuva would enter tapped, but if you don't really need to copy it, you don't have to use the mana from Thespian Stage, and if you really just want to have another land, Vesuva entering in tapped is not that big of a price to pay for the ability to copy something really, really good in the game where it's really going to be helpful. So that's kind of the idea here. I think if you wanted to, you could drop 10 lands and be okay. You could also drop one of these mountains for a Soul Ring, Jack. I don't know if you feel that Soul Ring will reduce the creativity in your builds. If that's the case, then obviously it's not going to be very helpful to add one in. But if you do want to make the deck better, and you are open to playing Soul Ring in this deck, I think it will certainly help. I know Torbran cannot use both of the generic mana for Soul Ring, but the fact that even if Soul Ring only produced 1 mana, it would still be great in this deck. So I think that's something to keep in mind if, again, you're open to the idea of playing Soul Ring. Other than that, let's go ahead and start putting all these cards into categories based on what they do. So let's go ahead and start here. Starting off with Blazing Volley. So this is going to be something that can turn into a 1 mana, deal 3 damage to each of your opponent's creatures. Not bad. I don't know how many games it will be relevant even with that, extra buff. Just because when you've got just a spell that deals 3 damage to your opponent's creatures, that's going to leave a lot of the biggest and most important creatures on the battlefield. So you want to be able to use the cards that are in your deck to be able to get rid of opponent's creatures. So yes, Blazing Volley, let's say you had 2 of them in your hand, you could use both of them to get rid of most of the creatures, pretty much all the creatures that you'll see in most games of Commander. But then again, you're using 2 cards when you could just be using 1. So I feel like, is it worth the mana reduction? You'd be paying 2 mana to deal 6 damage to each creature. It depends if that's what you feel like, but I think what red needs a lot more of is card advantage. So you don't want to be just losing cards from your hand. I think it's going to be much more important for you to pay the extra mana so you don't have to use as much mana from your hand. Next thing is Electricity, kind of the same idea here. Faithless Looting, this one is played very often for card selection. If that's something you need, if you're playing a graveyard-based deck or whatever is the case, Faithless Looting will be pretty good. We'll leave that here for now, and that might be something I might think about taking out as well, just because it's great in Modern, it's very fast, it's very efficient, but you're losing that card advantage because you're using one card to then draw 2 cards and then discard 2 more cards. So in total, you've lost 3 cards and gained 2. So that card disadvantage, is it worth the card selection? Some people say yes, some people say no. So we'll see how we get to it. Personally, I don't think it's worth it in most decks. Again, unless you're playing something with a graveyard, then that's a different story. But for this situation, for this deck, I don't think it's going to be worth it. Let's find out as we go through this deck to see if there's something else that's showing us, oh yeah, Faithless Looting definitely is worth it here. Gamble, this is a tutor, so that's a great card. I love that card a lot. What is this one? Lava Dart deals 1 damage to any opponent. That could be turned into a bolt. Also, you can sacrifice a mountain to have it work twice. So 1 mana to deal 6 damage to any target, or 3 damage to 2 targets. It's not bad, actually. I think in terms of burn, this is actually pretty good. I don't know if we're going to be looking to do stuff along this line where we're just trying to deal with one thing at a time, but the fact that it can deal with creatures for 1 mana at instant speed if you've got Commander out, I like this for spot removal. I think that's going to be pretty good there. Same thing with the Lightning Bolt. It can't hit 6 toughness creatures, which is usually the threshold that I put at, but having, being able to hit 5 toughness creatures, I think that's close enough for the purpose of this deck, Doctor. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Quest for Pure Flame. So you are going to get plenty of quest counters on it, so then you'll be able to sacrifice it and double damage. Sure, this is going to be a category here of damage doublers. We've got Red Elemental Blast. I think this is also going to be put into the spot removal category. Spot removal slash like counter spells. I guess those kind of fit into the same category. We've got Shock. Shock is another spot removal spell. However, the way I see Shock right now is I don't mind taking this one out because it is only going to be able to deal with 4 toughness creatures when Torbran is out there. So it might not be worth it. It might be too small of an effect for Commander to actually worth playing, to actually play it. Compared to Lava Dart and Lightning Bolt and even Elemental Blast, I think those are going to be a little bit more helpful. Faithless Looting and Winds of Change are both in the category of card disadvantage, but I think the difference here is Winds of Change can actually net you more cards. If an opponent has a lot more cards in hand than you, then can you draw that? You can only draw as many as you have. So you use 1 card from Winds of Change, you lose your hand, and then redraw just those many cards. So you're always going to be going down a card for Winds of Change. Same thing as Faithless Looting, surprisingly. We've got Ruby Medallion. This is going to be some ramp, making red spells cost less. Same thing with Fire Diamond, allowing you to tap for red mana. Thermal Alchemist, I believe this one deals damage to each opponent, which is pretty nice. It gets turned to 3 damage, and on top of that, whenever you're casting instants and sorceries, it also gets put to a lot. So I actually like this one. This is what I'm going to put into a new category here of Group Slug, is what I'm going to put. We've got some more spot removal with Smash to Smithereens, which is kind of nice. Skull Crack, it allows you to deal 6 damage, but only to a target player. So this is a tough one, right? Because Lava Dart you can deal to any target, Lightning Bolt you can deal to any target, Skullcrack you can only do it to opponents. It does allow you to stop life gain. Why don't we make this a separate category? We're going to put this into the life gain stopping cards. So anything that like anti-life gain, I think is going to be pretty nice. Next category we've got here is we've got 7 copies of 7 Dwarves. This one actually has the rule that allows you to play more than one of them, which is not something you usually see in Commander. You don't usually see that in Commander at all, but you also don't see it on Magic cards in general. So you could be playing here 7 Dwarves, but this is not going to be a Dwarf tribal deck. And I did talk to Jack about the 7 Dwarves specifically because I wanted to make sure that I was, seeing, was this a flavor inclusion? What's going on with the 7 Dwarves? And he said, I don't mind dropping the 7 Dwarves here. So that's what I'm going to do with these. I'm going to put these 7 Dwarves into the drop category. So that's over here. Next, we've got the Searing Spear. So this is another bolt. Again, I feel like this is fine. It is 2 mana this time. But in this deck, I'd rather be playing Searing Spear over Shock, for example. If we're playing 3 mana for that, then obviously that's worth taking out. But paying 2 mana for this, I think that's reasonable. All right, Pyroclasm. This one deals 2 damage to each creature. So with Torbran, it gets up to 4. And this is certainly better than the 3 damage. It is shocking everything. And I guess if Shock's not good enough, then I guess Pyroclasm isn't either. Let's keep going along here. We've got Mizium Mortars. This one's fantastic. This one is a great board wipe in a deck like this. Whereas Blazing Volley and Electricity, I just, the more I think about it, the more I don't like it. I'm going to go ahead and put those into the drop pile as well. Lightning Strike, another example of a Searing Spear effect. What else do we have here? Immolation Shaman. This one definitely seems like going to be in the category of the Group Slug effects. We've got Volcanic Fallout. This one is another effect similar to Pyroclasm that I think is worth dropping here. This is going to be anti-life gain, so we can put that there. It also fits into you know, Group Slug if we wanted to put it there. What else do we have here? Repercussion. So this one is going to be really good synergy with this deck. I'm going to put this into the damage doublers because it turns your damage on creatures into damage on the opponents as well. For example, combine that with Mizium Mortars, I mean, phew, that's going to be some serious damage. What do we got here? We've got Chandra Fire of Kaladesh. So this one with Torbran can allow her to deal 4 damage to players, planeswalkers, or creatures, which is, again, not that great. It does, however, turn her front side into being able to deal 3 damage, dealing 6 damage when you cast red spells. I like this one. I think this is going to be pretty good. We did have already the Immolation Shaman, I think. No, I'm sorry, the Thermal Alchemist, which is kind of in a similar position. We'll put this in that same spot because we can use it to deal damage to target player. We cannot use it to deal to creatures. However, every time we cast a red spell, we get an additional 3 damage. Not bad. Alright, what else we have here? Anger of the Gods. This one's another good board wipe. We can bring this up to 5, which is, I guess, going to be the new threshold. Personally, I like 6, but for this one, I'm going to be a little bit more lenient here on this deck specifically and say that 5 damage to each creature or to a single target creature is going to be good. Spell Shock here is going to go into the Group Slug effect. We've got Risk Factor, which combined with Torbran can deal a lot of damage, which technically puts us in the category of card draw. So I definitely see this one being good card draw. Faithless Looting and Winds of Change. I'm not seeing anything here that's putting me into the position where I feel happy to play those. Risk Factor, though, I do like this one a lot. We've got Magus of the Wheel. This one's also a way for us to draw cards. A little bit risky, a little bit situational, but I think it's going to be worth it here for this red deck. Gutter Snipe. This is going to be another Group Slug style effect. Same thing with the Goblin Sharpshooter, so we can use this to deal damage to any target. So that also includes creatures, which is kind of nice. We've got Browbeat, which is going to be the same thing as Risk Factor here. We can use that, so people are probably not going to be wanting to take damage. We can use that to draw 3 cards. Or I think it's 3 cards, right? Yeah, draw 3 cards. Furnace of Wrath, this is going to be another damage doubler, which I guess in a way the damage doublers also fit into the Group Slug effect, but we'll leave them separate for right now. Pyrohemia, this one's also going to be, I guess this is going to be a board wipe, really, because it can be used for a lot more. This is going to be Ramp, since we'll be using that to generate a lot of mana. Technically, Cough of the Hammer could, -2 to produce a lot of mana. I think that's reasonable to consider it Ramp here for this deck. Next, we've got the Fiery Confluence, another great board wipe here. Disrupt Decorum. This one's pretty good. It doesn't technically count as a board wipe. It's more like a fog effect, if anything. And it is a little bit out of place here. However, with Disrupt Decorum, I think this might just be like a good enough deck or a good enough card that it's worth including here. Yeah, that's a tough one. Let's leave that one for the end, and we'll come back to that one. Chandra Torch of Defiance. This one is card draw, which we need a lot more of. We also have the Ramp on there, so if it counts as one, it counts as the other, so that's going to be pretty nice. We can kind of consider it on both aspects of that. Here's some more card draw. So we were seeing a little bit of Chandra sub-theme, but that might just be because it's really good. Alright, we've got War's Toll. This one's pretty interesting. It shuts down the ability to do stuff at sorcery speed and at instant speed. However, it's only for opponents. This one's pretty good if you want to shut down counter spells. So we're going to put this into another category here, which is going to be the anti-counter spells category. We've got Perforos. This combined with, I don't think we have that many ways to have creatures out there, but this combined with other things allow us to deal a lot more damage. So I feel like this is going to be good enough here for the Group Slug effect. Mana Barbs, of course, that goes into the Group Slug also. We've got Dagger Caster. It's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. This one costing 4 mana. I mean, it's not really that great, so I'm going to go ahead and put this into the drop pile. Burning Earth, I love this card, especially with all of these basics in here, and that might be the reason to be playing not that many utility lands. But I feel like if you're playing even 5. You know, you'll have a couple of lands that you can use in situations where you need them to, and you'll be taking 1 damage. I guess technically 3 damage from Torbran, but that should be a lot less than your opponent, so you should be okay there. Gratuitous Violence is another damage doubler. Heartless Hidetsugu is also a damage doubler, since the first time you activate it, everybody's life total is now half. So every every damage dealing spell, the percentage of how much life they're taking away has now doubled as a result of the activation from Heartless Hidetsugu. So it's not exactly a damage doubler, but if you do the math, it is basically a damage doubler. Same thing with the Dictate of the Twin Gods. It does deal that damage to you though, so you got to be careful with that one. Curse of the Bloodletting is also another damage doubler. It's on one specific opponent, but it is pretty nice. We've got Hostility here, which is a very specific synergy spell with a deck like this, using a lot of instants and sorceries that deal damage. When you got a lot of those, you got his Hostility, that can usually be pretty good here. So I'm going to put that into the Group Slug effect. Being able to, for example, we've seen already, I think this one can deal damage to opponents. Yeah. So let's say you have a Fiery Confluence in hand, you've got a Hostility on the battlefield. You can use that second mode 3 times. You're dealing 2 damage to each opponent 3 times. Each one of those damages get increased by 2, so that's 4 damage to each opponent. That's a total of 12 damage to each opponent. Each one of those points of damage is going to get replaced by a 3-1. So now you've got 12 times 3, 3-1. So that's 36 3-1s. Each one of those are going to be dealing 5 damage thanks to Torbran. So 36 5-1s in essence. Each one of them that's going to be unblocked, dealing 5 damage. That's going to be a virtual amount of, 180 damage. Well over the amount to be able to kill each opponent starting at 40 life. So Hostility, you can see here, can make the dreams come true. So we're going to include that one here for sure. We've got Chandra Flamecaller. This one can create tokens as well. It also allows you to keep your commander out there while you're drawing cards. So while we did not include Winds of Change, I think the fact that Chandra Flamecaller can stick around on the battlefield makes it pretty good here. And we've got plenty of board wipes. We don't need to include her in the board wipe section either. Everything else here, that's all they really do for the deck besides, a specific category. So we're going to include that there. Whereas this one, since it can do card draw, we'll put it in the card draw section. And yeah, I am being a little bit more lenient here. Usually I only include card draw if it's 5 mana or less, and if it actually generates you card advantage. But yeah, like I said, I'm being more lenient when I do my deck doctors. Not, completely ripping apart the deck to make it exactly how I would do it. I just talk about what I think will be the best changes and, as few changes as possible to make it into a deck that is going to be really good from my perspective. All right, we've got Chandra Awakened Inferno. It definitely counts here as a board wipe. It counts as spot removal, or I'm sorry, not spot removal, as a as Group Slug. That -X here deals it to so you can exile something. I'm going to put this here in the Group Slug category because I feel like that's going to be a good spot for that one. We've also got some more spot removal here from Tyrant's Familiar. Again, pretty expensive, but I mean, technically we've already got enough spot removal that we don't really need to include this there, but we've got that available for us as well. This one I really like in that if something happens and there is a board wipe, we also get to deal more damage to opponents. It is even nicer when we've got Torbran out in the battlefield. So I'm going to put this into the Group Slug category and go to the next one here. Balefire Dragon. This one's another board wipe. We'll go ahead and put that one there. Insurrection. This one is just like Disrupt Decorum, where it's just a generically good card. Same thing with Blasphemous Act into the board wipes and Earthquake. So that's the full deck here. We've got 15 cards that we technically could drop. We've got 2 cards here that I like because they just have a lot of value, inherent value to them. So that's where I'm thinking about this one. So now the question is, what do we have here that we actually want to increase? I do like the idea of adding some more ramp, and I do like the idea of adding a little bit more card draw. Both of those could be pretty nice. So let me see here. Yeah, this one's ramp as well. So we've got technically 5 ramp and 6 card draw. For me personally, I like having 9 each of those. Other people might say something else, like Command Zone says 10 of each of those. But let's go ahead and talk about that as though it were just 9. I'm going to go ahead and put the Insurrection and Disrupt Decorum into the same category as the tutors, just because Gamble is really the only tutor anyways, so we don't have to worry about that too much as it is. We've got these over here. I don't know if it's going to be super necessary for us to have the anti-life gain, but I think it's a question that's arguable that we do want to have it enough that we can include at least 2 cards for that. I don't know if we need more than that, but at least we can include those 2 cards. So again, we want to have, I'm going to go ahead and start putting a couple of cards here just as a, just to take up space to keep in mind of what I want to do. How do I want to do this? Let's put blue to represent card draw. So I want to have, let me see here. I want to have at least 3 card draw. We'll use green to represent ramp. We've got 4 ramp, technically 5 with that Chandra. So we want to have 5. I'm sorry, we want to have 4 more ramp. So let's say we add in 4 more ramp. How much do we have left over after that? We've got a total of 8 cards left over. So what would we want to have those 8 other cards be for a Torbran deck? That's an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure with Torbran. Okay, we want to have things that deal damage. So that's going to be part of it. We want to have things that deal damage. And I think since we're going to be going on the game plan of trying to double up the damage and increase the damage even more, there might be something to be said here for things that can deal damage in other ways. So maybe an effect that will, whenever something happens, damage is dealt. So why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and search here for whenever. Let's look for damage. All right, so and I'm going to make sure that I set the quantity here to 0 because I want to include things that are not in that are not something that I own already. And I do want to make sure that I'm looking at this by color. So let's go ahead and sort this by color, and that way we can skip down all the way to the red. And there might be even a way here. I don't usually use this for deck building, so let's learn together. We're going to go ahead and search here. If I put in just red, does that show me only red and colorless spells? It might. Let me see here. I want to say red and colorless. So let's see if that fixes us. So we've got color identity only red. We've got colorless spells, which of course these are blue and black identity, respectively. But I think with the rest of these, this is actually going to be pretty good. I want to increase the size here so I can go through these a little bit more easily. Excuse me. And then we're going to start looking at these. Okay, so most of these here are not going to be, super great. Why don't we do this? Let's look for things that say X damage. Actually, no, let's keep going this way. I want to see what we can find. And let's start off here with 9 damage. I doubt there's anything dealing 9 damage, but we can start by that and then going down in numbers. Yeah, so there's nothing here for 9 damage. Let's go down to 8 damage. Let's see if there's anything for that. And it looks like there is one. There's just a power 8, rather. So let me see here. If we can deal damage to silver-clad Ferocidons, we can make opponents, sacrifice permanents. However, the problem is that Torbran's already increasing our damage output, so we're probably going to be killing it from the first damage anyways. Let's go down to 7, see if we can find anything here with 7 damage specifically. 7 damage, I guess Kozilek's Return. So this one's, again, another example of something that's probably too small. We want to look for things that deal at least 3 damage to creatures or more. We're not casting a lot of big creatures here. But it is a pretty good enchantment where if we are casting creatures, we can deal damage to opponents. I think this is probably not going to be good enough for this deck. We'll just be playing it, and a lot of times it'll just be a dead card. So I don't really look forward to being able to play that. Drakuseth, though, on the other hand, I think this one's pretty good here. It turns those damages into 6 damage to any target, and then 5 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. I mean, even just dealing 5 damage to each opponent every time this attacks, not to mention it's 9 damage in the air. To me, that seems great. I think that's going to be a good inclusion in this deck. I don't want to include too many 7-drops, of course, but I think when it comes to 7-drops, this one's definitely going to be helpful here. It's going to be pretty worth it. Whenever this attacks, it's not red, though. We want to find things that are actually red. So yeah, these colorless things, I guess we could technically take out colorless since we don't actually want that. And Kozilek's Return, it doesn't even get doubled up by a Torbran, or rather, 2 added to it because it's devoid and it has no color at all. So we can go ahead and go down now to 6 and see what happens from here. We're going to go ahead and go down to 6. We've got that Chandra Roaring Flame. This is the flip side. We had the front side of it already in the deck. And there it is. Let's see what else we can find here. It can, when it enters the battlefield, it deals basically 2 damage to 2 creatures. Not super great. Inferno Titan, though, this one's pretty interesting. We can deal 5 damage to 1 creature, so that certainly falls into the threshold. However, if we don't need all that much damage, we can deal 3 damage to 3 targets, which is pretty nice. It also has the ability for fire breathing, and when it enters, it does that. So, I mean, you're really seeing a lot of value here from Inferno Titan. I don't think it's worth here for 6 mana, though. I think it's... Let's add it in. I mean, we're already dropping... Are we dropping anything else that's pretty expensive? Not really. No, not really. And out of those two, I do like Drakuseth more. I'm going to try to limit to only one card above 5 CMC here to recommend. Because I don't want to mess up the curve too much. I think that would be a very bad decision. We do have Balefire Dragon in the deck currently. This one deals damage equal to that target, to its power to target creature. Okay, so that's interesting that you can attack creatures specifically with Laccolith, but not something that I want. While we're going to be looking here at the CMCs, I'm going to go ahead and reduce it to anything that's like 5 CMC or lower. I don't want to be finding a whole bunch of big CMCs, even though stuff like we did see that Hellkite Tyrant. I love that card. I think it's a lot of fun, but we'll not include that because I think Drakuseth will be better in this deck than the other options. All right, let's see what else we can find here. So we've got Lightning Rig Crew, dealing 3 damage to each opponent, but that's not that great. We can deal 7 damage to any target when we've got creatures attack, or rather dealing combat damage, so probably not going to be good for this deck. What else can we find here? Deals 5 damage to target creature and opponent controls. That's whenever it gets dealt damage, but not that great. We see that Sarkhan's the ceiling. We'll probably see it a couple more times here. That's just the way that one works. Let me see here. Deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost. I don't think that's going to be too helpful here either. Let's go down now to 4. And so now here at 4, this one's going to be, I think, a lot of great cards. We're going to finally start seeing some cards that I think will be important to be using. This one is like a Gutter Snipe ability. I believe we've got a lot of effects here that are instant and sorcery based. For what I can tell, we do have a couple of those. It might not be enough to really, take advantage of electrostatic field. Unfortunately, that might be another thing that we want to include for this category with the with what we want to add in. We'll see. We'll see exactly what we want to do. Lobber Crew obviously is not going to be good because we're not playing multicolored stuff at all. We've got here. Let me see here. Fire Juggler Clash. Okay, so that's probably not going to be that great. This one's another example of a Gutter Snipe effect. This one's about discarding cards. Okay, we've got Craig Saurian. That's an interesting card. Bomb Squad. Okay. Shaun of the Great Hunt is not in our color identity. So yeah, a lot of things here. There's a lot of really good options, but we're not seeing them at the moment. Thunderbreak Regent, this one can deal 5 damage to players who try targeting it, which is kind of cool. But in Commander, you mostly have a lot of board wipes, so maybe not that big of a deal. Sarkhan the Masterless, this one is interesting. If we had dragons in here, it also could work as Pillow Fort. No, I think, if we did use the -3... Hold on a section. Actually, if we had the -3, we play this down -3, it'd be down to 2 loyalty. But now everything that's attacking us has to worry about a 4/4 dragon and being dealt 1 damage before they even get to deal the combat damage themselves. So maybe that's interesting here. I was thinking that we could use the whenever and that we would deal some damage to opponents. But from what I can tell, it doesn't look like we're doing a whole lot of that here. Let's go and go down to 3, see what we can find. We do have the Immolation Shaman, which is kind of cool. This is dealing 1 damage to each opponent or each player. So we'll probably be seeing some more of those effects while we keep going down. So Pyrostatic Pillar, this one's going to be most effective against decks that have low CMCs. We do have a little bit so-so, like we're kind of in the middle. So I guess there are decks out there that will be playing even lower CMCs where this one will be dealing a lot more damage to them. Torbran here, is it dealing? Actually no, it's only 2 opponents. So we actually will see Pyrostatic Pillar dealing 4 damage to opponents, but only 2 damage to us. I kind of like that here. I think that's going to be pretty good. It can come down early on, and now opponents are they're feeling like, do I really want to be playing out these things? And that actually makes me think there's another card that I think would be really good in this same category. And it's another dinosaur. I can't remember of it. I think it's in something Ferocidon. And we'll find that here soon. But I think that's going to be good here because it makes opponents, playing out creatures really, really risky. So let's keep going down here. Kessig Forge Master. It's only when it gets blocked, okay. Thermo Alchemist. We do have that one in the deck already. Ash Zealot. This one's only when people cast spells out of graveyards. That's not super reliable for us to be seeing, so I'm going to not include that one. But if, Jack, if you've got a lot of graveyard-based decks in your meta, then obviously Ash Zealot would be pretty good here as well. Eidolon of the Great Revel. I like this one. Kind of the same idea as the Pyrostatic Pillar. I think it was based on that. Is what the design was, probably. Let's keep going down, though. Let's see what else we can find. You can deal 1 damage to each opponent. It's got Defender as well, so we can't really attack with it. But if we decide to block, it is basically a 3/3 thanks to Torbran. But let me see here. Brimstone Trebuchet. If we do this... Let me think about this. We go for Brimstone Trebuchet. It comes down. We can deal 3 damage to each opponent each turn. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. I think this one's pretty good. It really puts a pretty fast clock, dealing 3 damage to each opponent each turn. But we already did not include a couple of cards that were doing that anyway, so yeah, let's not include that one. Let's see if we can find stuff that can deal 4 damage to each opponent each turn or more, is the idea here. Chandra's Spitfire, the fact that it's got flying, and we're going to be dealing a lot of non-combat damage, makes me think that Chandra's Spitfire could actually be dealing a lot of damage to an opponent. It's pretty low as well. It does fit into the Chandra flavor aspect, which is something to keep in mind. I do kind of try to keep in mind when I do deck doctors, like what are some also flavorful inclusions that are also good. Chandra's Spitfire might actually be one here. I'm going to put this one into a maybe pile. I'm going to leave this... Can I put this into like the pile here next to it? Yeah, I'm going to put that into that maybe pile. And that one we might include. We'll see if we can find something better. If not, then that's something I think could be helpful here as well. Okay, let's see what else we got. You know, drawing 2 cards per turn is not going to be happening super often, so that's probably not going to be that great. This one's colorless. Non-token artifacts we don't have a ton of in this deck. That one, here's the Rampaging Ferocidon. This one's not going to be great because we're not going to be doing a whole lot of attacking for the most part. But Rampaging Ferocidon, oh, fantastic. I mean, this one, your opponents, whenever they get creatures down, so even tokens, they get down tokens, each one of those tokens is going to get them dealt 3 damage. So that is a lot of damage. Very, very, it's a ton. It's really a lot. What else we've got here? Whenever it is dealt damage, we don't really deal damage ourselves. 1 damage to each opponent. Okay, landfall. So landfall is pretty interesting. If we use the tunneling Geopede and we had like fetch lands, we could actually deal a lot of damage. I don't know. I don't feel like that's super helpful here. Virechild can create a lot of tokens for us, but we're not super interested in that. The double strike and trample here is kind of interesting. What else we've got? Because, I mean, we can use this, and if there's only an opponent that has, like, 3 toughness creatures, we attack with the Prophetic Flamespeaker. That first strike damage will kill that creature, and then we can draw cards on top of that. I kind of like this for the card draw section. So why don't we put this in the card draw section? We'll take out the Thassa's Oracle to indicate that we have removed, or we have added, rather, one of the cards that will allow us to deal damage, or draw cards, rather. All right, so what else we have here? This one is just not that great. I don't think there's really a world where I want to play that one. This one allows us to destroy artifacts, and we get to deal 5 damage to the creature, to the opponent that controlled it. It's not bad. I guess it could be okay, but at the same time, no. At the same time, I feel like it's just we have to get it to flip, and if we put that in there, then we're going to be wanting to not cast anything on our turn. We're not playing a lot of instants anyway, so probably not worth it here. Forerunner of the Empire. 1 damage to each creature whenever a dinosaur enters. We're not going to have a whole lot of dinosaurs. It is a tutor that can get us, like, for example, the Rampaging Ferocidon, but I think we're going to not include that one. Half Heart here is for goblins, which we're not playing a ton of those. This one is, again, some more small effects, some things that are a little bit too small. I like Vance's Blasting Cannons. This is definitely one of the examples of cards that I was thinking of when it came to options that would allow us to draw cards. So we're going to go ahead and add that one in, and then Thassa's Oracle is going to get dropped here as well. Hellrider, this one's really good. I mean, if we don't even have that many creatures, but even with such a low amount of creatures, Hellrider will still deal tons of damage to our opponents. So we want to include that one, I think. The Karplusan Minotaur, normally I'm not a huge effect of cumulative upkeep cards or of coin flip cards, but this one is actually pretty cool in that when we win those coin flips, which will be happening half the time, we get to deal damage to opponents' creatures and it'll get buffed up. So I actually kind of like Karplusan Minotaur here. I think that one actually could be pretty helpful. Let's keep going along here and see if there's anything else that we want to include. Deals 3 damage to that. Okay, so that's only when it becomes a target, not a really big deal. That's when it becomes blocked. That's when it becomes blocked. That's the one we saw earlier. So let's see here. Attacks or becomes a target. We can deal 3 damage to each opponent. You know, we might be able to attack here and use that. If not, then we can at least exile the top 2 cards of our library, choose one of them, and then play that as a spell for our turn. So if anything, this one can count as another card draw effect. And yes, I don't actually have right now the Outpost Siege, but I think that one could also fit in the deck as well. So we're probably going to be, you know, seeing that one going. And you know what? Let me go ahead and grab that one here after I end this. Seerkara the Bold. This one's another example of using our instants and sorceries that deal damage to get some more card draw. So I like that Seerkara here as well. Thunderbreak Region we saw earlier. Sorry, I just saw it, and I know it's a commander, and I know what it does, so I just wanted to add it in before I forgot. Deal 3 damage to target creature that player controls. Not super great, I think. Yeah, I don't think it's that great. This one's pretty interesting in that it buffs up all your creatures, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like that Chandra's Spitfire, but this one's for all creatures. Then again, we don't have a lot of evasive creatures, so maybe that's not that great. And you know what? The more I think about a Tectonic Giant, while it does draw us cards and it can deal damage, I mean, just the fact that we don't really have evasion, we can't guarantee it getting in there. Unlike, for example, the Prophetic Flame Speaker, that one is a little bit better at getting in for damage. I'm going to say let's not include that one. I think that one's fair to not include. Alright, so we can exile a land. Whenever a land with the same name as the exiled card enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, this will deal instead 4 damage. That's just really targeting on one opponent. We want to have things that can deal it to all opponents more. Normally, it's not a great idea, but I think in this position, it's actually going to be a good idea for us to go for it that way. The reason the Vance's Blasting Cannons was showing up was because on the flip side here, it deals 3 damage, which is good. I mean, we can use that for extra damage if we'd like. But what's more important here is the front side for the card draw. So let's go ahead and add in the Outpost Siege as well. So Outpost Siege, and then I'll come back to the whenever damage 2. So we can include that one. So we're going to go ahead and add in the Outpost Siege. That's going to replace that card that we dropped here. So we shouldn't have any more card draw available. Yeah, we've got 4 ramp, and then that's it. Okay, all right, so we're doing pretty good here so far. We've got room for 1 more card, so let me think about this here. Whenever, and we're going to say damage 2. Oops, sorry, not 3. We want to include 2. So we'll include 2. At the same time, let me just double check on our existing Group Slug effects, because if those are being used to deal, you know, not that much damage to opponents, then we can kind of go from there and say, okay, hold on, we actually have something better that we want to do here. So Stalking Vengeance, I like this one. This one's going to be good. This one can deal... so the emblems don't count for Torbran, obviously. We can deal 3 damage to each non-elemental creature, so that's kind of like a board wipe. We can minus X, so we could always like -1 to deal 3 damage. I guess in a way this counts more like a board wipe, but that's fine. We'll go and skip over. This one's just synergy here. Burning Earth, that's Group Slug, and this one can deal a lot more than just 1 damage to each opponent. The same thing with the Mana Barbs. Perforos, I think we've got enough creatures at this point where this one's actually pretty good. Goblin Sharpshooter, so whenever a creature dies, but this only deals 1 damage to any target. I mean, the fact that we can target something and deal 3 damage to it, I think is pretty good, especially if something is already dying. I mean, Goblin Sharpshooter can just literally get rid of all the 3 toughness creatures. And then on top of that, if there's enough creatures afterwards, you know, be able to deal with other creatures as well. So, for example, let's say there's a creature with 4 toughness on the battlefield, and it only has 4 toughness because there's something else that's, you know, increasing its toughness by 1 or by 2 or whatever. We can deal 3 damage to the creature with 4 toughness. And then, I guess another creature has to die first. Yeah, I guess no, it doesn't work that way. Well, you know, in any case, being able to deal with all 3 toughness creatures all the time, I think it's going to make Goblin Sharpshooter pretty good. Gutter Snipe, we do have this one because it deals 4 damage to each opponent, and we should be seeing it here when we go through our search that we have currently up. This one here is obviously going to be dealing you know, a lot more damage than just 2. This one, it does only deal 3 damage. I think the fact that it's a Flip Walker could make it pretty good here, so let's just keep that around. This one, so this one's an interesting one. Sometimes opponents won't have artifacts or creatures, or really lands that are having abilities that are not mana abilities. But the fact that we can also give it menace and sometimes get in for damage, and it's only two mana, I think it makes it pretty good here. And then lastly here, the Thermal Alchemist. This one does care about instants and sorceries. And it's about 1 damage. So what we'll do is, why don't we do this? We'll come back to the whenever damage 2. Instead, right now, let's just look at whenever damage, and we're going to say here sorcery. So we can see whatever things, actually, no, let's do instant. Not because we have more instants in here, but sometimes things will come up because it'll say only cast this ability, only activate this ability as a sorcery. All right, so we've got Electrostatic Field. This one will deal 0 damage if we're not casting instant sorceries. I think that's a bigger deal. So this one's whenever we're dealing damage to our opponents, we get to deal that much damage to creatures. I like this one. This one's going to be really good synergy here. We've got Thermal Alchemist, Aria of Flame. This one is also an instant and sorcery based card, but if we're not casting instants and sorceries, we don't have a guarantee that we'll be able to deal damage, so not going to be worth it here. Same thing with this one, we have to actually be using it in order to get that damage. So yeah, it looks like the Thermal Alchemist is the only example of a card that would work there. Other than Gutter Snipe, of course, which is going to be in our whenever damage 2. So we'll find that one here in just a second. So whenever damage 2, let's see what we can find. I like the Satyr Fire Dancer, and currently, right now, we could be dropping the Chandra Spitfire, but I want to go back through those cards that I've suggested to add in and just double check that they are actually good for the deck for us to include. Hellrider, I think this one's going to be good enough. I could be wrong on that one. That one I think might be something you'll only be able to see through play testing the changes. I think Chandra Spitfire I think is pretty fair to say is going to be worse than all the cards that we have suggested up to this point, and worse than all the other cards. I don't think there's any other cards I'd like to drop at this point either. So let's go down here from this point. So this one is it's just not that great. I don't know why. I guess Fire Drinker Satyr would have been a standard aggro card, I suppose. But I don't really see that being helpful here. That's whenever it gets blocked. This is another effect like that. So this one can deal 3 damage to creatures before even first strike damage, which is kind of cool. It makes it hard for opponents to attack you. Yeah, it makes it very hard for your opponents to attack you if they've got 3 toughness creatures. So in a way, this kind of counts like Pillow Fort, but it's a creature that can die pretty easily anyway, so maybe not interesting for us to use. We don't have a lot of artifacts in here. Non-creatures, this is another example of an effect that's like good, but we don't have a guarantee that we'll be able to use it. And you know what else kind of fits into that category is the Immolation Shaman. I mean, if we're not playing Firebrand Archer, why are we playing Immolation Shaman? I mean, it's good, it's kind of cool, but I don't think, I mean, unless there's a meta reason, like if there's something in Jack's meta that makes this super good, it might actually be better to be playing Harsh Mentor here. Because we can use this, it's kind of the same idea, but we're dealing an extra point of damage. So, if anything, I would say like drop the Immolation Shaman for the Harsh Mentor. That could be at least an upgrade here. If you like both of them, or at least if you like the Immolation Shaman, then at least the Harsh Mentor should be in there as well. So let's keep going down here. Protection from Blue. I know this one can be pretty good for a lot of decks, but we're not interested in using that one here. All right, so Horde Ambusher. Okay, not really useful here. Spirits and Arcanes, not cast all that often. Okay, we'll keep going down. We've already seen a couple of these cards, but we'll keep looking just to see what happens afterwards. Lightning Rift, it said whenever a player discards a card, oh man, it would be a lot better. It actually might be worth including here, but just because it says only cycling, not going to be helpful. All right, so we've got Kolaghan Aspirant, or Aspirant, I don't even know. I guess it's Aspirant. It has to come from Aspire. I don't know. But it's not that good anyway, so... whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Marauding Raptor deals 2 damage to it. Yeah, not that great, so, unsurprisingly. Punishing Fire is an interesting one. It is something that only deals a smaller amount of damage, but the fact that we can get it back when opponents gain life, or if they gain life, could make it like repeatable and put a clock on our opponents. This one's another maybe effect, because, without the life gain from an opponent, this one's just not going to be good enough. And I guess in a way, there's no guarantee that opponents are going to be gaining life. Probably a guarantee that they're not going to be gaining life. I think that's more likely, which is why I was kind of like in the air about whether we really should be playing the anti-life gain effects. But, it's going to come up enough that I think it's worth using. So let's see what else we've got here. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if a player had another land enter the battlefield under their control this turn, this will deal, in that case, 5 damage. So every time somebody cracks a fetch land, instead of losing 1 life, they'll be losing 6 life. And if they've got ramp, then they're going to be losing life from that too. I like this card, honestly, a lot. And I think it's even better than the Harsh Mentor. I think it's going to be more likely that opponents are going to be playing ramp spells than they're going to be playing cards that have, like, activated abilities. Is it going to be true, though? I guess technically here we can drop the Hell Rider, because we were kind of, you know, we were kind of, like, so-so on it. We weren't, like, completely comfortable with that. It being included. I mean, it's 3 damage per creature, but it's only to defending player. Yeah, let's just drop the Hell Rider. We'll include the Tunnel Ignis. I think this is actually going to be a good deck for it, because 5 damage is certainly a lot. Grenzo is kind of cool, but not going to be super great here. Anti-life gain here. I like this one. I actually kind of like this one more than Skullcrack, to be honest. But if only it had an evasion, I think would be interested in using that one. Okay, so a couple of cards here that are not going to be great. What does the Bone Crusher Giant do? Yeah, I don't think that's going to be helpful here. Let's see what else we've got here. Attacks and isn't blocked. Yeah, not what we're looking for. Becomes blocked, dealt damage. Gutter Stamp we have in the deck already. Becomes tapped. Insolence will deal damage. Okay. No, I don't think that's worth it. I was thinking, like, we can technically be having it deal 4 damage every turn, but opponent could just decide not to tap that creature anymore, so probably not that great. Let's see what happens from here. Okay, so that's another being blocked thing. This is about goblins dying. We don't have a lot of goblins dying. This is about countered creatures dying. Small creatures attacking. Vampires dealing damage. Whenever it attacks, deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. So this one, whenever it attacks, it gets rid of all things with 3 toughness, which technically means that it leaves those creatures around on the battlefield that could actually kill it. Yeah, without evasion, I just don't see us really being able to use that very well. So let's see here. It deals damage. We have Spell Shock in the deck already, or technically in the is it in the part that we want to include, or was that part of the deck already? I don't know. I think it might have been a part of the deck already. Yeah, there it is. It's part of the deck already. Anyways, so let's go ahead and see. Becomes tapped, deals damage. This one's another example similar to the Prophetic Flame Speaker, but the fact that it doesn't have first strike damage doesn't make that trample any helpful. So it doesn't make it any more helpful. This is another example. I think that this is one we were talking about earlier. If we were playing fetch lands, then we could use the Tunneling Geopede to deal 6 damage to each opponent in 1 turn just from a fetch land, which is kind of cool. But since we're not playing them, and because I don't think it's worth actually including them here just for 1 card, I'm going to say not to include them. Okay, so let me see here. We have Chandra's Phoenix. This can be used to return it from the graveyard to our hand. I think in another deck it might be good, but maybe not this one. Same thing with the Furnace Celebration. We're not going to be discarding cards. White and blue only. Not going to be super helpful, I think, for us. I know white and blue. I mean, white for sure not, but blue might be a deck that would be harder for this deck to beat. But black and green are certainly there with blue. So if anything, we'd be looking for like 2 of those 3 colors, blue, black, or green. The fact that it has white doesn't make it good enough. Whenever it deals damage, sacrifice a land. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, if Scab Clan Berserker is renowned, it deals 2 damage to that player. It's got haste as a 3-drop. I mean, there's plenty of games where you can play down a 3-drop and no one's got a blocker. And non-creature spells are pretty common, so why don't we include that one as well? Let me see if there's anything here that I'd want to drop. I mean, the Harsh Mentor right now is the card I don't like out of the ones that I've suggested. I feel like everything else so far makes a lot more sense. Dracoseth, I still like that one a lot. I do actually like that one more than Tyrant's Familiar. Because, yes, it does deal 9 damage in the air and 9 damage to a creature a defending player controls. And it's got haste. But of the 2, Dracoseth and Tyrant's Familiar, I like Dracoseth more. So, would I suggest dropping the Tyrant's Familiar? No, I don't think so. I do want to include the Scab Clan Berserker, but I think that's going to come from Harsh Mentor just not coming up enough, not being relevant enough to really matter. All right, so let's see what else we've got here. We do have to include the 4 ramps. We're not at that point yet. Zozu the Punisher. This one falls into the same category as the Tunnel Ignis, so I like that one. The benefit here is that Tunnel Ignis is the one that's specific to only ramp spells and only, you know, fetch land style effects. Whereas Zozu doesn't care. If you're just playing lands, you're going to get dealt damage. So that makes it kind of nice there. Let's see what else we've got here. We're almost here through this category, and I don't think I'm going to go down to 1 because we've already looked through all the ones that really matter to us, which is the instant and sorcery based ones, so we're not going to include that one here. So this is whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control. We already kind of talked about why that's not going to be great here. Although, I guess, you know, Jack, if you want to go for the fetch lands and you want to include some of those landfall abilities, I mean, it could make the deck better. That's certainly a possibility. This one is whenever it attacks. Okay, let's go to the next row here of cards. We've got Perforce already in the deck. This is whenever we're casting our second spell each turn. It's not super likely that we'll be doing that, you know, casting multiple spells per turn. It'd be nice, but I just don't think it's going to be coming up enough where dealing 2 damage to one target, which is going to be turned up to 4, probably not worth it here. We can deal 7 damage to an opponent. We already kind of saw that one here. Double Strike. This one's out of our. This one is out of our color identity. Tuk Tuk Scrapper. This one's kind of cool. It destroys an artifact when it enters. We don't have a lot of allies, to be fair, but the fact that we can destroy an artifact and get to deal damage equal to that artifact's controller. But it's only equal to the number of allies you control, so only going to be 3 damage. I thought it was equal to the converted mana cost. That's not going to be that great. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, Ether Flash deals 2 damage to it. Alright, so if we're going for Ether Flash, that's going to really push us in the direction of not wanting to include creatures that would be dying to 2 damage. So how many creatures do we have that would die to 2 damage? Let me see here. Just going to go through this and just look at it really quick. So that doesn't die to 2 damage. Magus of the Wheel doesn't die to 2 damage. Let's see here. Stalking Vengeance doesn't die to 2 damage. Our Commander doesn't die to 2 damage. Hostility doesn't die to 2 damage. Let's keep going down. Purpose obviously doesn't. Sharpshooter would. So we have 1 creature so far that would die. Gutter Snipe would also die, so that's 2. Chandra, Fire of Kaladesh, that's also going to die, so that's 3. This one would not die, so it's only 3 so far. This one would not die, obviously. Heartless Heated Sugu does not die. I mean, if we have damage doublers, then that really makes it worse. But, I mean, so far I feel okay with this. So we've got 3 creatures so far. After that, the ones we're including, we got 4, 5. That's not an additional, so that's 5 so far. 5. 5 still. This is also going to be still 5. This is going to be 6, so that's the 6th one. Then we've got Scab Clan Berserker, that's the 7th one, and then Zozu, that's the 8th one. So Ether Flash could be nice. That combined with our Commander can really shut down our opponents from getting down creatures in the first place. I think because of that, it's going to be worth including, but the question is, do we change our suggestions to make Ether Flash better? Because if we don't include any additional creatures with toughness 2 or less, then Ether Flash could be good. So here's the question. Is it worth it to include 1 good card or include a bunch of good cards? Technically, we could be playing that 1 good card and then other good cards in other ways, but I think for right now, Ether Flash is not going to be the direction I'm going to say to take the deck. It could be good in other situations, but for this one, I don't think it's going to be good. So we'll say no, but Jack, if you like Ether Flash, you're seeing that card and you're saying, oh my gosh, I love that card, I want to have this in my Torbran deck, then from that point on, you can, change out the deck and fix it however you'd like. Or, this is always another option, this goes for all my patrons, if I make a deck doctor, you make changes and you want to submit it again for another deck doctor, I'm happy to do it. I don't mind doing the same deck every month if you want. It's up to you. I mean, this is, this is your perk. This is not for me. This is for you in essence. So it's going to be however you want it. And there, like I said, there were examples in the past where somebody gave me a deck that had literally only 1 card and say, hey, do a deck doctor with it. And from that point, I just said, okay, let me build the deck for you. So it's not just deck doctors that I can do for my patrons. I also can do like deck builds. Like, I love this commander, but I have no idea what to do with it. Why don't you give it a shot? All right, we've got Constellation here. We do have a couple of enchantments, but the fact that only dealing 1 damage to just 1 target. If it was like each opponent, I'd be super interested in it. But the fact that it's only like 1 target, probably not that big of a deal. Okay, so this one's going to be about whenever opponents target our things. And it is a ley line, which is kind of nice, but you know, there's not a guarantee that our opponent's going to be, like, let's say in a game, how many times are your things targeted? Maybe 3 or 4 times. Dealing 4 damage like 3 or 4 times is not really worth the, you know, the mana cost, the card to include it compared to other options that we have available. Alright, so this is going to be, again, we've seen this a couple of times here. It's got a lot of numbers on it. Extra arms, whenever it attacks, it deals 2 damage, so we can deal an extra 4 damage to the target. We already talked about why that wasn't super great here. Whenever we scry, we're not going to be doing a lot of scrying. We're not going to be casting any multicolored spells for sure. What else do we have here? 3 damage to each, sorry, to target creature, so that's not super great. Flying and haste, which is kind of cool, can really do a lot of damage, but it's only to one opponent. We want to make sure that we're dealing damage to each opponent as much as possible. What else we have? That's it for that. So currently we are at the finish stage. All we have to add in is ramp, and I personally can't think of anything else I'd like to add in besides these style of effects. So I'm going to say that's going to be good. I think the only thing I'd be interested in is, let me see if there's anything that's like at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, this deals 3 damage to them, because that would definitely be very, very helpful. I'm going to put here each, because it's either going to be at each upkeep or at, you know, each player or each opponent. So I want to make sure that I'm doing that. All right, so Stormworld deals X damage to that player, where X is 4 minus the number of cards in their hand. Most games, people tend to have like 4 or 5 cards. Occasionally they'll have 3. But see, now this puts us in a position where people want to be drawing more cards, and drawing cards is what's going to really hurt us in the end. So Stormworld, although it's 1 mana, I mean, Jack, if you like this card, I'd say I wouldn't blink at, you know, at seeing this card in the deck. But personally, I don't think it's good enough to include, to suggest going out to buy it, to include it. All right, what else do we have here? Call the Full Moon, Gibbering Fiend. Sorry, let me go back to the Gibbering Fiend. Beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards among cards in your graveyard, deals 1 damage to that player. We've got creatures, we've got instants, we've got artifacts, and I guess technically we could see enchantments. I would definitely be interested in seeing, like, if we're playing Gibbering Fiend, I'd be interested in seeing, like, fetch lands from that point, is what I would do, I think. So let's see what else we've got available here. We've got the Oath. We've got Oath of Mages. So let me see what else we've got here available. Each player, that player chooses, has more life than they do. They can deal, okay, so opponents can deal damage to each other, but we're most likely going to have the highest life total here, since Torbran's not affecting the spells, hurting us. So that shouldn't be too big of a deal here. Equals the number of artifacts they control. Well, because signets are running around, Ancient Runes can deal a lot of damage. So I think that's going to be a card we want to add. We'll find out what to drop, what not to include for this category, but for right now, let's just put that there and we'll figure it out later as to what not to include. Yeah, Gibbering Fiend, if we had the fetch lands, I would say absolutely play it, but without the fetch lands, I think we can find something better. Number of untapped lands they control, probably not going to be seeing any untapped lands, although this kind of forces them, combined with the mana barbs, they really don't have any choice. Now they're going to be losing damage equal to their lands no matter what, whether they're tapping them or not. So that might be interesting. Pyromancer's Swath makes us discard our hand. That's, I think, too big of a downside here for us to play it. If they didn't cast a spell, this will deal 4 damage to them. People are going to be casting spells, I think, no problem. 2 or few cards in hand. We already talked about why that wasn't super great. If that player controls more land, so it's only going to be dealing it to 1 opponent. We do have the Sulfuric Vortex. This one is dealing 2 damage to each player, so maybe Sulfuric Vortex isn't being used necessarily for the anti-life gain, but it's being used for something else. So that's going to be pretty cool. Unless one of their opponents was dealt damage that turn. So if an opponent wants to not attack and deal damage to somebody else, ooh, antagonism I like here, because now you're forcing opponents to not only just deal damage, they've got to deal damage every turn, or else they'll take 4 damage. So it really puts a clock on everybody else. Now you might be getting dealt damage too, though. But anyways, if people are going to want to attack you as it is, they're going to attack you as it is. Antagonism is not going to affect that. It can affect, though, when somebody wants to just leave up blockers. They're going to go into blocking mode. Now they have to attack at least with 1 creature. So antagonism here, I kind of like that one. What else do we have here? Charging Cinderhorn. If no creatures attacked this turn, put a Fury counter on Charging Cinderhorn, then Charging Cinderhorn deals damage equal to the number of Fury counters on it to that player. Another example of antagonism. And like I said, I think that's going to be pretty good here. Deals 2 damage to each other creature you control. That's not what we're looking for at all. Domain is going to be 1 damage. Oh, it's actually domain for that opponent. They're going to gain life equal to the number of basics, and then they're going to take 5 damage no matter what. So let's say they happen to be playing a 5-color deck. They'll gain 5 life and lose 5 life. I guess that's not that big of a deal. With our with our damage doublers, that could be nice. Collapsing borders, though, against an opponent's monocolored deck. We don't really want to be dealing more damage to our monocolored opponents compared to our multicolored opponents. Multicolored opponents, for the most part, will be a little bit more threatening. But at the same time, I feel like collapsing borders is going to be nice. Hold on, how much damage is going to be dealing it to us? We're going to gain 1 life and then losing 3 life. So we're going to be losing 2 damage from that. Best case scenario, opponents will be losing 0 from having a 5-color deck. So I guess that's a little bit too much of a risk. Let's say we're going up against 3 5-color opponents. This is going to be a dead card in hand. It's not going to be that great. I mean, even, check this out, even against, 3-color opponents. We got 3 3-color opponents. They're all going to be losing just as much life as us. So it's not going to be that, like, even with Torbran out there, collapsing borders will only be, like, if we're going up against 3-colored opponents. So probably not that great here. If that player has 2 or fewer cards, we already talked about why this wasn't that great. Let me see here. Whenever it enters or leaves, okay, this is cumulative upkeep card. I kind of know what this does, and the fact that it has cumulative upkeep just makes it just really hard to be able to use. I like the Carpusa Minotaur, though. I think that's pretty nice. When we get to the point where we're flipping 4 coins, I mean, yeah, I guess if we lose 1 coin flip, our opponents can start picking off our 1 toughness creatures. We do have a lot of 1 toughness creatures in the deck. But I mean, we're just going to be getting so much value out of that. I mean, we're already playing Pyrohemia. If we're trying not to have 1 toughness creatures, Carpusa Minotaur is going to be better than Pyrohemia anyways. This is another cumulative upkeep. This one allows you to divide it, though, so you can do like 3 damage to a bunch of small things. Cumulative upkeep, I don't think it's worth including that here. Sometimes it is, but I don't think... I mean, Jack, if you like it, go for it, but for me, maybe not. Let's see what else we've got here. Deals 4 damage to that player unless they control a commander. That's pretty interesting. So we can deal 4 damage to opponents who don't have their commander out there. And now their commanders are going to be better to get rid of, and they're going to keep wanting to play out their commander. It could cost a lot. I like this card. I think this is going to be a good card for us to include. Magmasar, what does this one do? If you don't, and it deals to each creature and opponent... No, I don't think so. Alright, so what else we got here? Pyroclast Consul. We have to have Elementals and Shamans. And then Spiteful Visions. Alright, so that's pretty much all the cards that I could see that I'd like to include. So at this point, let's go ahead and take a look at the cards that we're saying to drop and the ones we're saying to add in. So we'll go ahead and we'll do this. We'll move the 4 ramp spells here all the way to the top so we can add in cards again. For me, that's how I like to do it. I like to add in cards. So, Pyrostatic Pillar and the Eidolon of the Great Revel. I think both of those are going to be doing a lot of work here. Vance's Blasting Cannons and the Outpost Siege are going to be good card draw. Same thing with the Circara and the Prophetic Flame Speaker. I like them. Rampaging Frostodon, going to be great for dealing damage to opponents. Same thing with the Carplusan Minotaur. Satyr Fire Dancer is just really good synergy. Zozu the Punisher, I think, will be dealing a lot of damage to opponents as well. Same thing with the Ancient Ruins. Crimson... What is this? The Crimson Honor Guard, Charging Cinder Glade, and the Antagonism. I think these are all going to be pretty good. So currently we can drop those 2, the Scab Clan and the Drakuseth. Of these cards, though, I guess Crimson Honor Guard, we can drop that one as well. We need to find 1 more card either to drop from this pile or from the pile of cards in the deck. And you know what? I was talking about life gain not being super necessary. Let's go ahead and drop that one. I feel like I'd rather have all of these cards right here. Every single one of these cards I like more than Skullcrack. So why don't we drop that one here? Because this can only deal damage to players, I believe, right? Yeah, only to players or planeswalkers. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to drop these cards here. We'll not include the Drakuseth, Sclab Clan Berserker, or Crimson Honor Guard. Although these cards are very nice and I like them, you know, they've got their individual reasons that we're not going to be including them. Obviously, here, this one could still, you know, all opponents could have very cheap creature commanders or gods that are indestructible, and then it's like very hard for us to get rid of them. Scab Clan Berserker is not going to be guaranteed that we can get in with it, and then Drakuseth doesn't have haste, so paying 7 mana for a creature that can just die immediately is probably not a super great idea. So now what we can do here is we can look for a ramp. And the cards that I like a lot in terms of ramp are going to be cards like Gilded Lotus, Thran Dynamo, and Burnished Heart, cards like that. So what's going to be most important for this deck? Well, we do want to have a lot of mana, but it looks like since we've got so many non-artifact, or rather so many red spells, we want to make sure that the ramp cards that I'm suggesting are going to be able to produce red. So first off, Gilded Lotus. I think this one is going to be fantastic for a deck like this because you can get it down, and I've got to get rid of the colors here. Get rid of the colors. Not going to be including colorless anymore. Oops, got to get rid of that one as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just search by... am I allowed to do that? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and include the Gilded Lotus. Going to drop one of the ramp spells that way. This one can produce 3 red, which is pretty nice. I also like Burnished Heart. It's a way to prevent, one combat creature coming at you on turn 4 while getting also two mountains out of your deck. So I like Burnished Heart for that reason. So we can drop another ramp spell here. Now we did mention earlier Soul Ring. I'm going to go ahead and include that for the purpose of this deck doctor. And Jack, you might have mentioned before that you feel that Soul Ring just reduces creativity of decks. And if that's the case, I apologize. I just don't remember. Sometimes I have a lot of conversations with my patrons, and not to say that you can't have a conversation with me if you're not a Patreon of mine, but if you are a patron, you get to talk to me on Twitter, talk to me on Patreon, talk to me on Facebook, and send me messages, and we can talk. Like, hey, I have this idea. Do you think this is worth looking into? Should I be building a deck around Construct Tribal? Is that something that I should be interested in? And I can talk to you there one-on-one. All right, so we've got Gilded Lotus, Burnished Heart, and Soul Ring. Beyond this one, what else would be good for a deck like this? We've got Worn Power Stone. That one is nice. We've got Torbran. Torbran could come down. We can use that. Hold on a second. What can we use here with Torbran that could be pretty helpful? The thing I'm thinking of, check this out. We can go for Dowsing Dagger. We can get that down either before Torbran or after Torbran or whatever. If we have a 3-drop creature, we can get the 3-drop creature down, and then turn 4, get down the Dowsing Dagger. Give somebody, someone who doesn't matter, some plants. But then we attack with the Dowsing Dagger, we flip it, and now we can produce 3 red mana from that land. I like that one. I think that's going to be a pretty good inclusion here. And if we don't, we have Torbran here at 4-drop. If we don't have that 4th mana, we can then just play the Dowsing Dagger and attack with Torbran. Probably not too bad either. On turn 5, we can probably get it in with a, what is that going to make it, a 4-5? Yeah, a 4-5 is going to deal extra damage. So we probably can get it in and not really have to worry about it. So that's going to be the suggestions I'm going to be making for this deck. A lot of great cards here in the drop pile. So don't think that I'm saying that these cards suck. I think they're not bad, but I think overall the deck would be a little bit happier with these cards. So that's going to be my suggestions here for Jack. Thank you so much for joining me and watching this episode of Gavony Township. I hope you had a lot of fun watching this, kind of seeing the thought process behind how I design decks, what makes me want to include a card or not include a card into a deck. And I hope you enjoyed Jack submitting this Torbran Thane of Redfell deck as well. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Stay awesome.